Hi everyone, welcome back. Hope you've all had a good weekend. So you should be watching this video if you are studying GCSE English. We're still remote learning, so you need to go and join the Google Meet if it was your week where you were due in college this week. You'll find that on the Google Classroom stream. Your tutors will be waiting for you there. And they should explain what's going to happen this week and also direct you to this video. So this video, as it was last week, is a recording of the lesson that you would have had we been face-to-face in college. If you weren't due to be face-to-face in college this week, you still need to complete this work as you would normally. You need to go through this video, you need to complete the activities on it, and you need to turn in your work once you've done that. If you don't do that, remember you're not going to get a mark on the register, and that is going to affect your attendance. If you do need any help completing the work, even if it is your remote lesson, just go on the Google Meet that shows the time of when your normal lesson would be on the right day, and your tutors will be more than happy to help you. Okay, so last week we started a new topic. We started looking at paper 2. And paper 2 we discovered is all about non-fiction texts. There are a couple of differences between this paper and paper 1. Mainly that this paper is a little bit more challenging. So in section A, instead of just 1 text to read, there's actually 2. And instead of 5 questions, there's 6. Last week we looked at question 1 and we looked at question 2. This week we're going to be looking at question 3 and question 4. In section B, in paper 2, the writing section, instead of 1 task, you will have to complete 2 writing tasks. And we're going to be looking at them really soon. However, because this paper is a little bit more challenging, you have 2 hours in the exam to complete it instead of 1 hour and 45 minutes. All right, so our learning objectives for today then. So by the end of the lesson, we are going to be able to answer question 3 and question 4 in paper 2. How are we going to do that? Well, if you look at the first objective there, we're going to identify explicit and implicit information in a non-fiction text. Hopefully that sounds really familiar to you. That was the exact same learning objective we had last week for question 1. Next one, evaluating how far we think a writer expresses a specific viewpoint. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to infer meaning from what they say. Now, this is related to question 4. You've seen that word evaluation before as well. So when we get on to question 4, I'll make the connections in terms of paper 1. Now, finally, we're going to be organising our ideas into clear and coherent sentences, something that we do every week. All right, let's get started. So we're continuing with our theme of sport this week. Last week, of course, it was Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the footballer. This week, we're changing the sport, and the guy that we're interested in, Ayrton Senna. Don't know if you know who Ayrton Senna is. Might be a little bit before your time. If you are into sport, particularly the sport that Ayrton Senna participated in, you will know him because he's very, very famous in that respect. What I'd like you to do is I just want you to Google his name, okay? And I want you to write down 5 things that you learn about him. See if you can get some interesting things. Maybe they're not everybody's going to come up with. What most people come up with is the age, where he's from or his profession. Maybe you could find something a little bit more interesting, maybe not something that everybody's going to write down. So if you just want to pause the video, just 5 minutes, and write down 5 things you learn about Ayrton Senna, please. Okay, here are 5 things that I learned about Ayrton Senna. He was a Brazilian Formula 1 racing driver. Okay, I knew that already. If you don't know anything about F1 though, you might have not heard of him before. He actually won the Formula 1 championship 3 times, which is pretty good. He was a really, really talented driver, widely regarded as one of the greatest of all time. Unfortunately, He had a very tragic demise, Ayrton Senna. He was killed whilst leading the San Marino Grand Prix in 1994. It was a terrible crash, and he didn't survive it. He was only 34 years old when he died as well. So much potential. Okay, maybe you've got some similar things to me. Maybe you've got some things that are really interesting. Whatever you've got, well done. Just wanted to give you a little bit of context about who this man is, because he is the subject of the extract that we're going to be reading. Okay, so we're going to read an article that was written about Ayrton Senna. Now, Ayrton Senna is the focus of the article. He's not the writer. The writer is actually a journalist. His name is called John Watson. So when you're talking about this text, you need to be talking about John Watson as the writer, okay, and what he is saying about Ayrton Senna. Now, we need to read this extract, and we can do that together. So if you can go to Google Classroom. Hopefully you can see mine there, and click on classwork. You find week 16. Here we go, Ayrton Senna, paper 2, question 3 and question 4. Again, there'll be a couple of things uploaded there. There'll be this video, there'll be your answers. So that's the Google Doc that you need to open in where to write down your responses to questions. And this is the one that we're interested in, the one that says Ayrton Senna. This is the article that we're going to read. Okay. So I'm happy for us to read this together. Let me just get the correct thing on the screen. There we go. Okay. So if you want to pause this video while you sort that out, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you've got the extract in front of you. So you can see that it's a newspaper article from The Guardian. And the headline is Ayrton Senna. He had a fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car. There is one memory, one snapshot that is seared on my memory for life. Even though it lasted only 2 or 3 seconds, it was early in his career, at Brands Hatch, and he was on one of those bolts of lightning single lap efforts that he used to put in. Senna was absolutely mesmerizing. It was not only the speed he was carrying, but the way he controlled the car, changing gear, turning the steering wheel, and using the throttle to keep the turbo boost from dropping away. To do one thing at the speed he was going would have been something, but to multitask the way he did was remarkable. I don't know how he did it to this day. He had this wonderful mental capacity to put a number of inputs into the car at the same time, and he was frighteningly quick. I was commentating when he died at Imola in 1994. It was the worst weekend in F1 history. It was no normal race either. There was a shunt at the start, then a restart and a safety car. And all the time there was the pressure Senna was under from Michael Schumacher. But Senna, who was highly competitive anyway, had to do everything he possibly could to drag the necessary performance out of his car. Senna was the first ultra-modern racing driver, yet he had this wisdom. And the fact that he came from a developing country also gave him that incredible depth. He came out there in the most technological sport, the most physically demanding sport, a sport that also demands incredible personal courage, and he was the best of all time. The way he made the car dance on the track was just wonderful. He just had a fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car. I think Senna was prepared to drive for Williams for 2 or 3 years, but he was 34 and had already laid the foundations for his life beyond F1. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, he had taken a lot out of himself. He wasn't ready for full retirement, but he wasn't a long way away from it. His death was such a tragedy. He was a unique man, a highly intelligent man who would have loved the complexity of today's cars. He had this intensity, and the Latin South American aspect, the religious influence, and the looks that all made him a little bit different. He had some otherworldliness, the kindness, the rage, that cocktail of stuff boys fall in love with. He looked like a racing driver. He wasn't just some geeky little guy. He had all the qualities needed to be the best racing driver of his time. And that is exactly what he was. And he was also the fastest and most exciting. It may be 24 years since the Brazilian's car skidded off Tamborella Corner at 191 miles per hour, but his legacy as one of the sport's most courageous, vulnerable, electrifying superstars still burns as brightly as ever. Okay, so that is the extract that we're going to be using today. Now, we're going to start with question 3. Question 3 is all about finding information, and it's worth 3 marks to you. So you're going to be asked to find specific details using a second text or document 2. It will be divided into smaller parts, so it'll probably be labeled as 3A, 3B, and 3C. Now, the details that you need, they might be suggested, so they might be implicit, or they might be obvious, they might be explicit. But they're commonly presented as what, where, how, who sort of questions. Now, I'm hoping that this sounds really familiar to you because it's exactly the same question as question 1. So remember, question 1, you had to do the exact same thing, but it was using the first document, and it was question 1A, 1B, and 1C. Okay, so nothing has changed here. In an exam situation, it's the same question. We're just moving on to the second text. Okay, so here are your 3 questions. It tells us to read the article about Ayrton Senna and then answer the following questions. So 3A, what does Watson say was remarkable about Senna? Now, because the word remarkable is in speech marks, that tells us that is an exact quote from that article. So if you're struggling to find that answer, you just need to scan that text for that keyword remarkable. And when you find that word, read the entire sentence, okay? That should give you your answer. 3B, give one detail from the text that suggests Senna was a fast driver. Now, there are lots of details that suggest that he was a fast driver. You just need to find us one. And then question 3C, when did Senna die? Also worth 1 mark to you. So please pause the video here, go over to your extract, give yourself 5 minutes, see if you can find the answer to these 3 questions. Okay, so we've read the article and we've looked at the questions below. 3A, what did Watson say was remarkable? He said to multitask the way that he did. Well done if you got that one right. The next one detail from the text that suggests Senna was a fast driver. Now, there could be lots of responses here. I've written down just a few of them. Hopefully you've got something similar. He was on one of those bolts of lightning single lap efforts. Why does that suggest then that he was fast? Well, it's the bolt of lightning bit, isn't it? If you're as fast as lightning, yeah, that's pretty fast. It was not only the speed he was carrying. Okay, so again, that suggests he was a fast driver because we're mentioning speed. To do one thing at that speed would have been something. Okay, so again, that implies that whatever speed he was going at, it must have been very fast. And he was frighteningly quick. That one's a little bit more obvious, I think. Yeah, quick obviously implies that he was fast, but he wasn't just quick, he was frighteningly quick. So that word frighteningly there, that adverb accentuates how fast he was going. Number 3, C. So if you have anything different for 3B and you're not sure whether it's right, pop onto that Google Meet and check with your tutors. Anything that sort of suggests anything about speed should be okay. So 3C, when did Ayrton Senna die? Tells us in the text that it was 1994. Maybe you actually found that out before when you Googled him. Okay, well done. So if you got all 3 of those, you would have got 3 marks. Hopefully nice and straightforward, not having to do anything from your own general knowledge. It all comes from the text, remember. So what did we do? All we did there was we found specific details using the second text, and the questions were divided into smaller parts. Some of those answers were obvious. So when did he die? 1994. Some of them were suggested. Yeah, what suggests that he was a fast driver? We had to read between the lines. They will always be presented as sort of what, where, how, who, which sorts of questions. And remember, it's exactly the same question as question 1. It's just on a different text. Okay, if you have any questions, if there's anything you're not sure about, or you want any feedback, or you want something check-in, pop onto that Google Meet where your tutors are waiting. Ask anything that you need to ask. Okay, so we're going to move on to question 2 now. So do you remember doing this in paper 1? What's better, Instagram or Snapchat? I think most of you concurred that it was Snapchat. Some of you didn't like either. Can you remember what skill we were demonstrating though when we had this discussion? We sort of, we weighed up the pros and cons of each one, and then we came to a conclusion and we sort of justified why we thought one was better than the other. I'm hoping that you're all shouting, evaluation, Michelle, evaluation at your screen, because yeah, it is evaluation. Question 4 is another one of those. How far do you agree? Again, you can see it jumps from 3 marks to 10 marks, so gets quite serious quite quickly in paper 2. Now you are going to be given a statement. For example, the writer creates the impression that Instagram is better than Snapchat. How far do you agree? What you need to do is you need to decide whether you agree or disagree. Now, it might be both. That does depend on what text it is. But you need to decide whether you agree or disagree about how far the writer has expressed the viewpoint in the statement. You then just track through that text and you would highlight all the keywords or phrases that you think support whether you agree or disagree. You might be asked to consider the entire extract, or it might just say something like using the first 5 paragraphs or the last 4 paragraphs. So do please pay attention to any directions in terms of where you need to look. Now, it's exactly the same as the question in paper 1, question 5. I'm saying, does this sound familiar? If you have been paying attention, if you've been revising, it should sound familiar to you, because in question 5, it's almost the exact same question with the how far do you agree? Okay, this is the question then that we're going to have a go at. So John Watson has a great admiration for Ayrton Senna. How far do you agree? You should comment on what he says and how he says it. Now, I just want to make something really clear in this question, because sometimes people get a little bit confused. This question is not asking whether you admire Ayrton Senna, okay? Because it says, how far do you agree? That's not what it's asking. It's asking, how far do you agree that John Watson has great admiration for Ayrton Senna? That is a really important distinction. It's very easy to misunderstand. I've seen it happen a lot, okay? It's the way that the question's worded. But it's not asking for your opinion. is asking for how far you think John Watson admires Ayrton Senna. Now, from what I remember that we've just read, John Watson seemed to really like Ayrton Senna. That's the impression that I got. I mean, if we just look at the headline, he had a fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car. I mean, if a headline is to indicate what's going to come in the rest of an article, well, that gives us a really good idea, doesn't it? This article is going to be about a man. That's a fantastic driver. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So that should give us a clue already that we're probably going to be agreeing for the majority, if not all, of the ideas that we make in this question. Now, what you need to be doing, whether you're working on paper or whether you're working on that Google Doc, either grab yourself a highlighter or use the highlighting tool on your computer and just go through and just highlight any words or phrases that you think shows that John Watson really admires Ayrton Senna. Then you might want to see if there's any words and phrases that show that he doesn't admire Ayrton Senna, remember, because we can disagree if we want to. But we need to track through from the beginning until the end. And remember, we need to try and always make a range of different points. Our target range is 8 different points supported by 8 different quotes. Now, I'm going to start you off, as I always would do, with 2 examples. You may copy down these examples if you want to get you started. Maybe you don't need them because you're fine on your own. The 2 examples then, I'll just go through. Firstly, I agree that Watson has a great admiration for Senna, as he says he had a fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car. This suggests that Watson thought Senna was an incredibly powerful driver who could dominate and control a car. So I've just used the headline there that we just talked about because I thought it was really relevant. What is my inference? My inference is that he thinks he's an incredibly powerful driver who could dominate a car. How do I know that? Because of the quote, a fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car. That's a metaphor, isn't it? He's not really talking about literally driving the wheels off the car. Yeah, it's just his way of implying that Ayrton Senna could really dominate a car. He could really control it. The second point that I've made. Secondly, Watson suggests that Senna is unforgettable, as he says he had a recollection of him that is seared on my memory for life. So why does that quote work so well? Seared is almost like burned or scorched, isn't it? If something's seared on there, it means it's permanent. Yeah, it can't be, you can't get rid of it. That's why my inference is he thought Senna was unforgettable because he's seared on his memory for life. Now you can see from these 2 examples that it doesn't matter whether the quote comes first and then you say the inference. So the fantastic instinct to drive the wheels off a car and then this suggests, or whether you say the suggests first, the inference first. So Watson suggests he's unforgettable and then the quote comes second. It doesn't matter which way they are, as long as you've got both of them. If you don't have a quote to support the point you're making, you're not going to get the marks. And similarly, if you just put lots of quotes but you don't explain how they're relevant, you're not going to get the marks there either. Okay, so our target, I want you to finish the rest of this answer. I want you to try and make 8 points if possible, which will give us 10 in total if you include mine. Now, a word of caution here. Last week, there were quite a lot of people that it looked as if instead of pausing the video here and having a go at this on their own, that they actually just skipped forward a little bit, looked at the feedback that was next, the exemplar responses, and wrote them down as their answers. Now, if you do that, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping us because we don't know what you understand and what you don't. And you're not helping yourself because you're not learning anything. It's actually better if you struggle a little bit and you find this difficult and you can't make those 8 points. That's how you learn. Just jumping forward and looking at some exemplar responses and writing those down is not really going to help you if you're not sure. If you don't know what you're doing or you're finding it really difficult, that's why your tutors are on the Google Meet. Yeah, we're not just sat there for no reason. We're sat there for you, to help you. Okay, so please, if you are stuck when you start this, go to that Google Meet, either in the chat or verbally just say that you need some help and somebody will help you. That is so much better than just copying down some answers and you not learning anything. Okay, now I think there's lots and lots of quotes in this text for you guys to all be really good and make some really good points on this one. And take your time, okay? There's no rush at the moment. What I would do is I would pause the video now and I would give yourself 20 minutes. Just see what you can do in 20 minutes, okay? So pause the video. If you need any help, go over to that Google Meet and we'll go through some responses in 20 minutes. All right, so hopefully you all got on okay, and if you needed any help, you've spoken to somebody and you've figured everything out. So I'm just going to go through some of the responses that I would have made if this was my exam. Yours obviously should look different to mine, and you should probably have a lot of different quotes. Now, thirdly, Watson suggests he thought Senna was fascinating to watch because he says he was absolutely mesmerizing. Nice short quote there, absolutely mesmerizing, suggesting that he was fascinating. Yeah, Watson couldn't keep his eyes off him. So again, this would be another, I agree that he had great admiration. Fourthly, Watson suggests that Senna had an extraordinary driving skills because he says to multitask the way he did was remarkable. We talked about this quote, I think in question 3. In addition, Watson uses a lot of positive words to describe Senna, such as wonderful, fantastic, and courageous. Really short point there, really easy point to make there. Just 3 adjectives there, positive adjectives, all with positive connotations. And if you wanted to, you could expand on that and say, for example, the word courageous implies that Senna was very brave. Or the word wonderful implies, yeah, and you could give a little bit more information if you wanted to. I also agree because Watson says Senna was the first ultra-modern racing driver, suggesting he thought he was ahead of his time. Moreover, Watson suggests Senna had more to him than just being a racing driver. The fact he came from a developing country also gave him that incredible depth. So the fact that he's saying he had incredible depth does imply that there was more to him. Yeah, it wasn't just a racing driver. It wasn't just surface. Yeah, there was things going on that were a lot deeper. Okay, Watson also describes Senna's driving in an almost poetic way. I really like this quote. The way he made the car dance on the track was just wonderful. So he's personifying the car there, isn't he? Saying that the car can dance. And that suggests he believed there was something almost magical about his driving. Or perhaps you could just say, Watson describes Senna's driving as poetic through the use of personification, the way he made the car dance on the track. If you know that that's personification and you want to write that, that's absolutely fine. But remember, you're not getting marks for language feature spotting. It's not essential that you know that that's personification. As long as you can show the examiner that you understand what that quote means, and we are showing them because we're suggesting he believed there was something magical or something poetic. Yeah, perhaps you could say that Watson is describing his driving as graceful and almost choreographed and polished. It depends how you interpret the dancing part. Okay, Watson also clearly shows his admiration for Senna's driving talent by calling him the best of all time. Yeah, so that quote's very obvious, isn't it? Very straightforward, that one. Watson is clearly very biased. Everything that he says about Ayrton Senna is really, really positive. So we've got lots and lots of quotes that we can use here to say that we agree that he's got great admiration. Furthermore, he suggests that Senna was special because he called him a unique man who had some otherworldliness. So I've used two quotes there, but they're both supporting that point that he thought that Senna was special. Finally, Watson describes Senna as an electrifying superstar whose legacy burns as brightly as ever. These two almost don't even need any explanation, do you? Because they clearly, as I've put there, demonstrate that Watson's admiration for Senna is very, very strong. It's very intense. He's obviously very passionate about this. An electrifying superstar. That tells us everything that we need to know. And again, we've got this metaphor going on. His legacy burns as brightly as ever. You know, his light will never be diminished. All very positive, yeah, and all showing us that John Watson really admires Ayrton Senna. So I don't know about you, but all the points that I made there were in agreement. I couldn't find anything to disagree that that Watson didn't admire Senna. Be interesting if anybody has found anything that they think could justify it. Because remember, these are not right or wrongs. These are not gospel. These are just some of the points that you could have made. You can justify anything as long as you have a quote to support it and it answers the question that you're being asked. So I think I actually made 12 points in total there if we take, because I had 6 on the first slide, I've got 4 on this slide, and then I made 2 at the beginning, didn't I? Remember, your target was 8. If you've done more than that, that's fantastic. If you've managed to get halfway, that's also good. At this point in the year, we would be expecting you to at least be making 5 points here. Definitely 5 in 20 minutes. If we could get to 5 points in 15 minutes, that would be even better. So in the absence of us being there in real life and you and your peers not being there in real life, the assessment is on you. So we're going to do some self-assessment. A couple of people missed this off their answer sheet last week. Please don't skip this slide. This slide is important for everybody. It's important for you to get you into the habit of actually reflecting on the work that you've done. Am I good at this? Or do I find this difficult? And if I find it difficult, which parts do I find difficult? Which is the bit that I need to work on? So first thing you need to check is that you have actually evaluated. So how far you think the writer has expressed that specific viewpoint. So have you talked about how far you think John Watson has a great admiration for Ayrton Senna? If your points go off tangent or they're not answering that question, they're not going to be right. For every point that you've made, have you tried to embed a quote into that to support? Okay. Remember, no quotes, no marks. Also make sure that you are putting your quotes in speech marks so we can differentiate between what's your writing and what's being quoted from the article. Have you tracked from the beginning to end? So have you made a range of different points that come from different places in the text in a nice, logical, linear fashion from beginning to end? We don't want to take all our quotes from the beginning or the end. We want to show beginning, middle, and end. And as we've just talked about before, the range of points, your target was 8. So how many do you think you've got? So you could maybe give yourself a mark out of 10 here. So what have you mastered? What are you good at? Are you good at the quotes? Are you good with timing? Have you managed to make 10 in 20 minutes and they're all great? What do you still need to develop? Are you not making enough points? Is timing still an issue for you? Are you making quotes? Are you writing quotes that are far too long and it's taking up all your time and then you don't have time to make as many points as you need? If so, do we need to work on making those quotes shorter or embedding them a little bit better into your sentences? Maybe it's tracking through. Is it sort of, are you taking all your quotes from the beginning of the text and not getting to the end of it? And remember, sometimes EDUQAS give you extracts where at the beginning of the text, things are a certain way, but then by the end of it, they change. And they like to sort of show a change in opinion or a change in plot if we're talking about paper 1, so that you have something to comment on. So if you never reach the end, you might miss out something like that. Okay, so whatever your assessment might be, make sure you write down what you've mastered. Okay, so what went well and what you still need to develop. So what would be even better if. So again, pause this video now. Make sure you do that. Okay, good. So we've just had a go at question 4, the how far do you agree question, which is worth 10 marks to you. So it's that question where you're going to be given a statement and then it will say, how far do you agree? Remember, it's not how far do you agree, as in your opinion of that statement. It's how far do you agree that the writer has that opinion. So in the case of Ayrton Senna, it was how far do we agree that John Watson really admires him? So we would agree and disagree depending on the text about how far the writer expressed that viewpoint, and we would back up every single point that we made with keywords and phrases from the text. We would put those in speech marks and we would make sure that we'd taken them from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the document. Finally, we would either be asked to consider the extract as a whole or maybe just part of it. On this question that we just did, we were looking at the whole extract because there was nothing that told us we could only look at one specific part. So just to reiterate, this is the same question as question 5 on paper 1. You're using the same skills, that skill of evaluation, all right, in the how far do you agree? Okay, well done, everyone. So this is what we've done today. We've been looking at how to answer question 3 and question 4 in paper 2. So we've identified explicit and implicit information in a non-fiction text, and we've also evaluated how far we think a writer has expressed a specific viewpoint by inferring meaning from words and phrases. We've presented that, hopefully, in paragraphs, organising our ideas into clear and coherent sentences. So well done. So final task for today then, please. Can you choose a number between 1 and 6? Like I said last week, don't all be choosing number 1 because you think it'll be the easiest. Okay, once you've got your number, if you've chosen number 1, you need to describe how to answer question 3. If you've chosen number 2, you need to list 2 things that are different about paper 2. See if you can do this without going back to the first slide. If you chose number 3, I want you to list 3 things you just had to check your work for in question 4. So it's what you've just done. If you chose the number 4, can you explain how to answer question 4 to somebody else? So obviously you can write this down, or maybe you want to record yourself doing it. If you chose question 5, I'd like you to summarize what it means to evaluate. And finally, if you chose question 6, can you explain one thing, not question 6, number 6, can you explain one thing you still don't understand about question 3 or about question 4? So make sure you choose a number from 1 to 6 and write down the answer to the corresponding number on your answer sheet, please. All right, folks, so that is all for today. What you need to do now is you need to check over your work. You then need to make sure that you go back onto the Google Classroom where your assignment is, and you need to turn that work in. I would also suggest that you pop back on the Google Meet to let your tutors know that you've submitted that. You could do that verbally or you could do that in the chat. You will receive some feedback on that work as soon as it's marked. And if you do want to talk about that feedback or you have any questions and the time of your lesson is still going, pop back on that Google Meet. Your tutors will be happy to discuss it with you. Okay, thank you very much for your hard work. Have a good rest of the week. I will see you next time.